Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and we are going to get started with the WordPress crash course. I'll give just a second for everybody to log in, go over a few administrative details while you're doing that. If you start the broadcast a few seconds or even a few minutes late, you should be able to catch up. It'll show you the beginning of the broadcast unless you skip ahead, either on the YouTube video or on the Google Hangout. So just a few administrative things. We do have the chat turned on for this broadcast, so you're welcome to ask questions during the broadcast via the chat. We also do have the Q&A turned on for this broadcast. So if you know how to ask questions via the Google Hangouts Q&A, you're welcome to ask questions that way. I also have the showcase turned on for this broadcast. So any links that I'm going to be showing during the broadcast will be in there. So if you want to view the links, you have access to them. We also have, for any of you that registered for the course through learn.pongos.com, once you log back into your account on that site, you'll be able to access the online version of the class, self-paced online version of the class. So you could actually go there, the WordPress crash course, and you can download the materials from there. You can also view the notes that we have for the class. Lots of other good stuff there. And there is a private forum. So if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them in the forum. We also encourage people to ask questions in the comments for that course page. So you can see that people from previous instances of this webinar have done that. So you're welcome to log in and take a look at that as well. All right, so we do have a slideshow that is available as the materials for the course. So after you're done with the class, again, you're welcome to log in and take a peek at that. All right, so let's get started with this. And I'm just going to do a really quick check on my email, make sure that nobody else has signed up for the course in the last few minutes. So we get that sometimes, people signing up for the last second. If they do that, then they need to get the email for it. And let me just double check real quick. 1 second here. I feel like I need to have some waiting music for everybody. I'm not seeing any emails. All right. So I think we are good to go for right now, unless somebody signs up in the next few minutes. If that happens, I'll let them in as soon as possible. If you have any trouble getting into the webinar through the Google Hangout, you can use the YouTube link as well. You don't need a Google account to use the YouTube link. So you're welcome to just go there. The only thing is you won't have the ability to use the Q&A on the YouTube video. So it'll just show you the video. It won't show you, and I can actually show you what that looks like. You can see it would just show the video, and it'll let you join. It'll tell you to join the Hangout, but it doesn't actually give you all of the options that you have available. All right, so back to my slideshow. And again, since you're registered for the course through the website, if you go to the My Courses page, you'll have access to the WordPress Crash Course online class, and you can download the slideshow from there if you need it later on. All right, so in this class, we're going to take a look at WordPress. I hope that's what you're here for. If you're not, you might be in the wrong place. Drop me a line and we'll figure out where you're supposed to be. But this is a class about just the basics of WordPress. So we're going to talk about what WordPress is, or what is WordPress. What are your options for hosting? How can you manage your content? Just the very basics of managing the content. The basics of managing and customizing our appearance. and also extending the functionality. And we're going to use something called plugins to extend the functionality in WordPress. So one thing I do want to note, there are several links in the slideshow labeled demo. You'll get those in the copy of the slideshow that you can download from the website as well. Just be aware that those may not work on your computer. Those are just links for me while I'm going through the slideshow to be able to click on to show you the demo on my website, on my computer. So unless you've got WordPress installed on your computer like I do, you might not be able to access those links the same way that I do in the video. All right, so first of all, what is WordPress? So it is a easy to use, very widely used, partly because it is so easy to use, content management system, written in PHP and MySQL. Don't worry if you don't know what those are, plus some HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And it's open source, and it's free. So let me just get in a little bit more detail about all of those. WordPress is a content management system that is used for websites. For any of you that have maybe heard about WordPress a few years ago, it has been around for a long time. It started out as a blogging platform, but it's evolved in recent years into a very robust, full-featured content management system. And you can use it for websites that do just about anything. So partly, I think, and a lot of other folks think this, partly thanks in part to its ease of use, because it really is easy to use. It is currently used by 23% of all websites. That means every single website that's out there on the web, 23%, almost 1/4 of them are written in WordPress. So that's pretty impressive. It's pretty widely used. It is also currently the most widely used of all of the content management systems out there. So there are many other content management systems, such as Drupal, Joomla, tons of them out there. But WordPress is the most widely used of all of them. It's currently at about almost 61% of all websites that use a content management system. So it's very, very widely used. It's pretty impressive numbers there. So as I mentioned, WordPress is written in PHP and MySQL. PHP is a server-side scripting language. MySQL is a database server. HTML is what defines how the content looks on the web, or not how it looks, but how it's structured on the web page. JavaScript handles some front-side functionality, and CSS handles the appearance. You don't need to know JavaScript, you don't need to know HTML, PHP, or MySQL, or any of those to be able to use WordPress. You don't need to be a programmer to use WordPress. It does help if you want to extend WordPress, if you want to be a super user in WordPress. It helps to have at least the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, but you don't need to be a super coder to work with WordPress. A really big thing about WordPress to keep in mind is that it is open source. That's a really big deal within the WordPress community. Open source means that the source code for WordPress is publicly available. WordPress is distributed using something called a GPL v2 license. And it's referred to as free software, but that's free as in free speech and not necessarily free as in free beer. And you'll hear that figure of speech used every once in a while in the open source community. There is a difference between free as in free speech and free as in free beer. So let me just cover a few of the freedoms that you have with WordPress and other open source software. And these are specifically for software that you receive that is using that GPL v2 license. So you have the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose. So if somebody gives you a copy of WordPress, you can run it however you want. You can run it for any purpose. You can run any kind of website that you want using WordPress. You also are free to study how the program works, and you can change it. And then if you change it or not, either way, you're free to redistribute copies of the program. So let's say you got a copy of WordPress from the WordPress.org website, which we'll cover in a little bit, and you made a couple of changes to it, which I don't recommend doing, and we'll talk more about that much later in this course. And you say, hey, I like my new version of WordPress. I'm going to redistribute it. You can absolutely do that. That is one of the freedoms that you have with an open source GPL v2 licensed software such as WordPress. And again, you are free to distribute copies of your modified versions of the program to others. And one of the things that you can do with open source software is you can charge people for those copies of the software. So free does not necessarily mean something is not commercial. Free open source software doesn't mean that you're not necessarily paying for it. You could pay for it. And one of the things you'll see later on is that there are lots of extensions to WordPress, such as themes and plugins that are not free. People do charge for those, but there are a lot of free ones out there. So we'll take a look at both of those later on. So for any of you that are still wondering, well, she said it's a content management system. What does that mean? The last thing I just want to cover on this is a content management system is an application that lets you publish, manage, modify, and organize your content. So that's a big thing about what WordPress does. And it has an interface, which we'll see a little bit later on, is called the WordPress dashboard, that lets non-technical users, which may include you might be a technical user, either way, doesn't matter, WordPress doesn't care. But it lets even non-technical users, it lets anybody that has access to the dashboard add, modify, and remove content. All right. So next thing we're going to look at is our hosting options with WordPress. So many WordPress users become aware of WordPress because they heard of WordPress.com. So some of you may have already had a site on WordPress.com. I'm going to open that up and show you WordPress.com. There it is. And you might have made a blog on there. You might have even made your business website on there, or your nonprofit's website, or you might have just had a personal website that you wanted to have for your collection of recipes or reviews of bicycles or something like that. So you can use WordPress.com for free. It's absolutely free. WordPress.com is it's a service that provides WordPress hosting. It just happens to be run by the people that also run the WordPress.org website, which you may have also heard of. And WordPress.org is where you would download a copy of WordPress to install on your own server. So you can use WordPress.com to set up your WordPress site, or you can download a copy of WordPress from WordPress.org, and you can install that copy on your own computer or on a web hosting account. So this version of it, the WordPress.org version of WordPress, is what we typically refer to as self-hosted WordPress, and that's what we're going to cover in this course. So we're not gonna get into the WordPress.com. We actually do have a workshop that that we teach sometimes on WordPress.com. It's super easy to use, but there are some limitations to it for the average user. So why would you want to go with self-hosted versus WordPress.com? Well, one of the big things is flexibility. If you download WordPress from WordPress.org and install it on your computer, you can make whatever changes you want to that installation. You can install any extensions to WordPress on that installation, whatever you desire. It's not always necessarily the best thing to install everything that you want, but you have that freedom. With WordPress.com, you don't have the same amount of freedom. Basically, when you create an account on WordPress.com and you create your site there, it has a lot of features, but if those features aren't everything that you need, you're stuck. You can't install any additional features. You can pay for upgrades to get access to some additional features, but it's not as flexible as what you would have with your own installation. So let's say that you're using a specific shopping cart. You already have a WordPress installation and you're using a specific shopping cart in that WordPress installation, and you're thinking about using WordPress.com. If WordPress.com does not support that shopping cart, you can't do it. You have to stay with your existing installation. So it's one thing to keep in mind when you're considering, should I download WordPress and install it on my own, or should I use something like WordPress.com? One of the upsides of using something like WordPress.com is that you don't have to worry about the technical stuff. Like, you don't have to update the software, you don't have to upgrade anything, you don't have to worry about firewalls or denials of service. I mean, you do have to worry a little bit about them, but if anything ever happens where your server is attacked by hackers, the WordPress.com people are the one that are going to fix that for you. So you don't have to actually do all of that extra stuff for your site. WordPress.com will actually do everything on that end. Now, I should mention that even though WordPress.com is a hosted WordPress service, it's not the only one out there, and there are other hosted WordPress accounts that you can get that have some of the same features, but in a lot of cases they do offer a lot more flexibility. So, and that's what we're going to take a look at. All right, so we have talked about what is WordPress.com, a little bit about self-hosting. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is some of those WordPress hosting providers, and I call those WordPress optimized hosting providers. Some of them will do everything for you from installing WordPress and updating and managing everything, and all you have to do is add the content. And some of them are a little bit more hands-off, and they just offer hosting that makes it so that you can install WordPress and you can do all the upgrades and you can manage everything yourself. So we are going to take a look at a few of those hosting providers. So some of them, and these are all hosting providers that Pongos uses with clients, that we recommend to our clients. If you go to any of these, you will find WordPress hosting, WordPress specific hosting. There are more out there. In fact, we keep adding to our list every day. We just started working on a project with another organization, another company called Pantheon, which isn't on this list yet. We have to add it to it, but that's another WordPress optimized hosting provider. So you may think, well, why should I do this? Why don't I just use my hosting at some WordPress account at whatever hosting provider that I have? Well, you could do that. It's just that these particular hosting providers do have WordPress optimized hosting. And one of the nice things about that is they usually tune their servers so that WordPress will run a little bit faster than it would on just your generic web hosting account. So a lot of these hosting providers also have just what we would call regular web hosting, where you could install WordPress, but that installation might not run as quickly as it would on their WordPress optimized hosting. So just a few of these. We actually just set up a client on DreamHost just a few days ago. They have one of their products that they have is, you can see, WordPress hosting, which is currently 20% off. And I believe it's like $20. It's usually about $20 a month. It's $19.95 a month right now. Super easy to sign up for. So you've got that as an option. Another one that we've set up a few clients on is Media Temple. You can see it's, I think it's about $20 a month also. Oops, yeah, $29 a month. It's a little bit more. They're all about the same for the basic WordPress hosting. So you're gonna see about $25 a month for the kind of basic WordPress hosting for a pretty basic site. So all of these, and again, the links for these are all in the showcase in the Google Hangout, and they will be in the slideshow that you can download from the site. So they're all there, and you can get access to them. So you may be wondering, well, how do I pick which of those hosting providers to use? There's a lot of things that you need to consider. I can't really give you a single simple answer. I actually did write a blog post about this. It's on the learn.pongos.com site. So people were asking, well, how do I pick? So I did add a blog post just on this functionality, or which one would you want to pick? And again, I can't give you a simple, always pick this one, because it's a really complicated question with a very complicated answer. So a few things that you should consider on which one you're going to pick. What is your budget? If your budget is $50 a month, then you probably need to pick a hosting provider that charges $50 or less a month. So that's kind of a no-brainer, but you do need to think about what is your budget. One thing I want to caution a lot of people on, you might be used to using something like GoDaddy or some of these really, really inexpensive, like $3 a month hosting providers. Be careful with them. They might support WordPress, but your site might be extremely slow on them. So when you're running something like WordPress, you may need to spend a few dollars extra per month to run a WordPress site versus what you might be used to spending for a static website, because it is a lot more resource intensive. It uses more memory on the computer. It uses the database. So just be aware that you might need to pay a little bit more, and your budget might need to be adjusted based on that. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the basic accounts for these hosting providers is around $20, $25 a month. So just something to keep in mind. So again, what is your budget? That's a big one. How much traffic do you expect? A lot of these hosting providers, so for example, WP Engine is one of them. They give you, on their plans, they give you an idea of how many visitors you might be able to get for each of their different plans. So if you think you might be getting 25,000 visitors a month, personal is fine. But if you think you're going to be getting more like 100,000 or 400,000, you're going to have to use a more expensive plan. And they're very good about asking you if you need help anytime you go to their website. So just something to keep in mind. So one thing though that they do let you try for 60 days. You can play around with it, see which of their plans works for you. But you can see, the $29 a month one is the one that lets you have 25,000 visits per month. Professional is $99 a month. That one lets you have 100,000 visitors per month. If you're not sure which one you have, a lot of these hosting providers will let you scale over the month. So that's one thing that you definitely want to check on them with. If you do get a huge spike in your traffic, can you upgrade to the next higher plan? And a lot of them will let you do that. Another thing is, do you want to manage the server, or would you like an expert to manage it for you? And for this, I don't mean just the WordPress installation, but all of the stuff behind the WordPress installation. So do you want to have to upgrade the operating system? Do you want to have to upgrade the version of PHP that's being used on there? Any of those other things? Do you want to do all of that work, or do you want them to do it for you? For most of these WordPress optimized hosting providers, they do all of that work for you. So you don't have to worry about it. There are some WordPress hosting providers that will let you have access to the server to make those kind of tweaks for you. But typically, for the average user, you're not going to want to do that unless you have a really, really good background with server administration. The other thing is, do you plan to do the WordPress upgrades? This is another thing when you're looking at these optimized hosting providers. Some of them will automatically do all of the upgrades for you. Some of them won't. Some of them will do the upgrades to WordPress, but they won't do upgrades to any plugins or themes. And we'll talk about what plugins and themes are a little bit later today. But that's another thing to keep in mind is, do you want to do those upgrades? I can tell you that WordPress has major upgrades about, it varies, but at least twice a year, sometimes more like 3 or 4 times a year. And each time you have an upgrade with WordPress, you need to upgrade the WordPress installation. And then you also need to upgrade the associated plugins and the associated themes. So, and that can take a few hours of time. So if you want to find a hosting provider that will do that for you, a lot of them will. But one of the things that you have to be careful with is if you're using a custom theme or a custom plugin that somebody wrote for you, or if you've made any tweaks to the WordPress core, which again, I do not recommend, don't do it, please don't do it. But if for some reason you did, when they do those upgrades, things could break. So you might not want to have them automatically do those upgrades, or you might want them to check with you first before the upgrade happens. So just another thing to keep in mind. Do you need direct access to your files or the database? Some of these hosting providers, again, will give that to you, some won't. So just another thing that you want to remember is do you need to have access to that? WordPress.com does not give you that access, so that is something to keep in mind, that you won't have access to your files. You'll have access to some of your files, but you can't FTP into the server to get those files. Sorry, one second. Okay. And you also don't have access to your database. So the reason that might be important is if you need to move to a different hosting provider, it's easiest if you have access to all of that to your database and to all of your files. So just another thing to keep in mind when you're picking a host. Are you going to do backups? Again, a lot of these hosting providers will do the backups for you. You don't have to worry about all that. They will automatically do it for you. Some of them won't. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Backups can take time. They can take minutes. They can take hours. So it's just another thing that you want to try to account for when you're searching for a hosting provider. What are you going to do about security? This is both for the server and for the WordPress site. So are you going to be checking every single file every day to make sure that there's no malicious code in it? Are you going to be reviewing every single plugin? Every time there's an update, are you going to be checking everything? So you do need to remember that in your budget as well. It can be expensive to have to manage the security for both the server and for the WordPress site, but a lot of these hosting providers do that for you. So, for example, going back to our WP engine, show all the features. They do have a firewall. They also do malware scanning. They will scan your files for you, and they'll check to see if there's any malicious code in there. So that's one thing that you can cross off your list. You don't have to do it yourself. Are you planning to install plugins? If you are, again, you can't use WordPress.com. And you do have to be careful using some of the hosting providers. Most of these hosting providers will let you install just about any WordPress plugin, any theme. Some of them won't. Some of them have blacklists of plugins and themes that can't be used on your site. And typically those are because they've experienced issues with the plugins. The plugins might slow down the entire server. So they're trying to make the server experience as fast as possible. So they're not going to always let you use every single plugin. All right. Now, once you've picked your hosting provider, and you have lots of choices. Once you've selected one, the next thing you have to do is install WordPress. So many of those hosting providers that I had on the 2 screens ago will install WordPress for you. So once you get your account, with a WordPress installation already set up for you. So it's like as soon as you log in to your account, WordPress is already installed. You don't have to do a thing. If for some reason they don't install it for you, and I believe all of those WordPress optimized hosting providers that I've already mentioned, they do it for you. But if for some reason you choose not to use a WordPress optimized hosting provider and you want to do it yourself, you can install it yourself. It's usually a lot of hosting providers will do what's called a one-click installation, where you go into your dashboard for your hosting account and you can click a button and it'll install WordPress for you. If you don't have that, so just another option, if you don't have that, or if you want a little bit more control over the installation, you can install it yourself. It's not hard. It's also not super easy. It does require knowing how to connect to the file server and how to create a database and everything. So we actually do teach a much more in-depth class that covers all that. There's going to be another session on Monday and Tuesday of next week. You're welcome to check learn.pongos.com if that's something you're interested in. But again, it's not super hard, but it does take a little bit more. It takes about 5 minutes instead of a few seconds to do that installation. It's also a good idea to install a copy of WordPress on your computer to do testing and for practice. So one thing, when you make changes to your WordPress site, they are live. As soon as you make the change, it is live. So it's a good idea to have a local copy of WordPress on your computer or something to make those changes before you make them on the live site. So if you want to see what your site would look like with a new theme, make the change locally on your own computer before you make the change up on the WordPress website, because otherwise, as soon as you make that change to the new theme, that's the new theme. That's what everybody's going to see. So one thing that you can do if you're not super tech savvy, you just want to get a really easy installation of WordPress and to test things out, you can use something called a Bitnami installer. And the Bitnami installer, that's what I actually have installed on my computer to do these demos. You can download a Windows version of it. a Mac version, Linux, you can download it. It's an executable that you run. You just double click on it after you download it, and it will install WordPress on your computer. And that's what we're actually going to use. So for the rest of this course, I'm just going to assume that you have WordPress installed somewhere. I'm not really assuming that you personally have WordPress installed somewhere, but that you either will have it or you can install this Bitnami installation to follow along. If you're following along on your own with this class, the rest of the stuff is using that Bitnami installer. All right, so next thing we're going to get into, and actually I'm just going to do a really super quick look at the Q&A because I see a couple of questions in there. One of the questions, 61% of all sites, I'm going to select it in the Q&A, 61% of all sites that use a CMS, but only 23% of all websites use WordPress. Don't most websites use some type of CMS now? I don't have the numbers for that. I can get it for you guys. I don't remember if it was most websites use a CMS or not. I don't think it was. I think it was something like half of it, but I don't have the numbers for me. So I will get that for you. And actually, give me 1 second. I can show you the URL where I got the notes from. 1 second here. Sorry, I have my notes. So this is where that statistic came from. You can see 23%. And let's see. So it looks like 61.9% of websites do not use a content management system. So most websites, a little bit more than half of all websites, are not using any content management system. And of the other percent out there, this is the breakdown that they got from this. You can see there's a lot, but notice that a lot of these are like 0.1% or less than 0.1%. So there are a lot of content management systems out there being used on just a few sites out there. And you can see for comparison, Drupal is on 2% of websites. One thing I do want to mention about that statistic is WordPress.com has millions of users on it, so that might skew the numbers a little bit because you've got millions of free WordPress sites out there on WordPress.com. All right, let me see the other question that we've got. Plugins don't always have to be updated with when a new version of WordPress is released. That's correct. It just depends on the plugin. So you'll in a lot of cases when you get prompted to do an upgrade, it'll tell you if the plugin needs to be upgraded also. Thank you, Norman. All right, so back to the presentation. Go back to managing our content. There we go. So we are going to take a look at the WordPress dashboard. That's the user interface for WordPress. That's where we are going to look at the back end. So I'm going to click on my demo link. All right, so I'm just going to log in. I've already installed WordPress, and again, I used the Bitnami installer to get in there. So this is my WordPress dashboard. My WordPress site looks like this. This is just a default Bitnami installation of WordPress. Nothing fancy, nothing exciting in here. It's using the default 2014 theme, and it doesn't have. Trying to remember. I think it's got a couple of plugins installed, but nothing really fancy going on here. All right. So in this section, we're going to take a look at the dashboard. We're going to set a couple of WordPress settings, some of the settings that I think are pretty important. We're going to take a look at the content that you can build in WordPress, so the content types you can build in WordPress. And specifically, we're going to take a look at posts and pages. All right, so as far as our settings, first one we'll take a look at is our general settings. And so if I go on my dashboard, This would be under the settings menu. If you just clicked on settings, it would take you straight to the general settings. But if you wanted to, you could also go to settings and then general. And in my general settings, I have my site title, which typically shows up in the title area. It might also show up in the tabs. It might show in, that's what's going to show up in a lot of cases in the search results for your site. So that is going to be important to have spelled correctly with proper punctuation and everything. The tagline, just a brief description of what the website is. I'm just going to change that, and I'm just going to save so you can see what happens to my site when that happens. You can see that changed to "We Love Apes" there. The tagline is whether or not it's displayed on the site depends on the theme that's being used. WordPress themes are what control the appearance of the site. Not all themes use the tagline. A lot of them do, some of them don't. But the ones that do, a lot of times they'll put them somewhere in the title. It doesn't have to though, so just be aware the tagline may or may not be used in the site. The email address, that's going to be your administrator's email address. It might be yours, it might be someone else's. It depends on who is managing the website. But this is going to be who gets notified of new users. If you have auto upgrades turned on, in a lot of cases it'll notify that user of those automatic upgrades when they've been done, or if an upgrade is needed, it'll notify that user as well. Membership, if you want people to register for your site, you can do that. Just to be aware, there have been over the past several years issues from time to time. They come up. They don't always happen, but from time to time, where users that have been registered for the site have been able to hack the site. So if you are just creating your business website and you don't want people to comment, you don't want people to interact with the website other than to look at it, then you may not want to let people register. You might just want to not check that. But if you're going to let people comment on the site and you want them to be able to log in and view their comments and edit their comments and stuff like that, or if you have forums or anything like that on your site, then you will want to let people register. If you do that, you also are going to want to make sure anytime there is a WordPress upgrade that, especially if it's a security release, that you do that upgrade as soon as possible. Because again, they find from time to time exploits within WordPress, and they fix them pretty quickly once they're found. But if there is an exploit, you want to make sure that your users aren't able to hack into your site. So if you do let people register, you want to make sure that you're having them register using the subscriber role. If you let people register, if you let anyone register, and when they register, they're an administrator, they have total control over your site. So you definitely don't want to do that unless you don't care. Some people might not, but I do recommend that you use subscriber. There are plugins out there that will create additional roles besides the ones that are listed here. So you might see some other ones like customer, keymaster, and so on. So your roles might differ from what you see here, but subscriber is a good one. Excuse me. Time zone is an important one. This is where your website is located. The default is UTC +0. You probably want to make it the time zone. If this is a website for your company or your organization, you probably want to make it the time zone of your company or organization. So I'm going to use New York, which has Eastern time, because they don't have DC. I'm near Washington, DC, but they don't have DC listed there. So we're just going to use New York. You can also tweak the date format for your stuff. So that is going to be what looks like this. Right now it's December 10th, 2014. It's got the month printed out, the day, comma, space, and then the year. If you wanted to have it show it a little bit differently, you could do that. I like the way that it is right now, but just be aware that that is something that you can change. If you're in Europe, you might want to have it show the day, month, year. So something you can change. Same thing with the time. You're allowed to adjust that. You can make it 24-hour time, 12-hour, whichever one you need. Another thing that I usually change, this is my personal preference, is week starts on. I know the work week starts on Monday, but when I look at a calendar, my calendar start on Sunday. So I usually change this to Sunday. The reason for that is because if you have a calendar in WordPress, and I'll actually just demonstrate this really fast. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to add it real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. So you see that calendar right there on the left side? That calendar starts on Sunday. That's because I changed my week starts on to Sunday. If you left it at the default, which is Monday, you would see your calendar now starts on Monday. And I know for a lot of people that are used to seeing calendars that start on Sunday and end on Saturday, this might look a little weird. They'd be like, why is it on the wrong day? Why is the 10th in the wrong place? So just something to remember. You know, people don't always look at that top row in the calendar. They just know Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But if you just be nice, don't have your week start on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and people's head might explode. So we're gonna make Sunday our start date, our start week, our start day. So it'll do that. All right. So the next thing we're gonna look at is discussion. So again, it's under settings, discussion. Just a few things to look at in these settings. It's pretty straightforward. By default, if somebody links to your site from another site, you will get notified that they've done so. So that might be nice to be able to see that. Just be aware that some people do that to spam your site. So they might do that because a lot of times if you just leave the settings on by default, if it just automatically approves comments, because these link backs, these ping backs and track backs are considered comments. So if you let them go through to your site automatically, you are going to be adding links to other people's sites, maybe inadvertently. Just be careful with that. Another thing is your comment settings. So I know a lot of sites nowadays, they just, if it's a content site and it's just like a corporate website where you're just posting your services, about your contact info, a lot of people will just totally turn off comments in general. So and you can do that. So you might, if you don't want people to post comments on even your posts on your blog, you can turn them off. And then you can turn them on for individual ones. So if there's a something that you post that you do want to have comments on, you can turn them on for that. But as far as the global settings, one thing you do have to be careful. If you allow people to comment on the site, you will get spam. It's just inevitable. Unless your site is password protected and nobody can actually comment without being logged in, and you have to approve who all of your commenters are, then you're going to get spam, and you're going to get people spamming your site to post links to their website. They're going to post stuff about Cialis and Viagra and Louis Vuitton handbags and all kinds of random stuff that probably has nothing to do with your website. It's just a fact of life. If you have a site, it's probably going to get some spam. So in order to sort of try to prevent that, there are a few things you can do. One of them is a plugin that we'll take a look at a little bit later. But barring that plugin, if you're not using that plugin, at the very least, you probably want to let people fill out their name and email address, and that is the default. So again, if people have to fill out their name and their email address to make a comment, then that's one slight barrier. Just be aware that people will fill out a fake name and a fake email, and they also have bots that will do that for them. So it'll go out and find a WordPress site, and it'll fill out a fake name and a fake email and submit a fake comment to help spam your site. So just be aware, this is not going to stop people from posting spam on your site. If you want it to be a little bit more secure, less spammy, you could require users to register and log in to comment. That would require in that general settings to allow users to register, because otherwise people can't register and log in to add their comments. But you do have to be careful with this, because it could prevent people from commenting who might otherwise want to comment, maybe want to do it anonymously. So you do have to be careful with that. There are services out there like Discuss. It's DISQUS to that you can add to WordPress to let people comment, so they might already have an account, and they can log in with their Facebook account or something like that. This is something that would be on top of WordPress. It would be an add-on to WordPress. So it's not something that's installed by default. The commenting system in WordPress is separate from that. Wouldn't use the two together necessarily. You could, but I wouldn't recommend it. So another thing that we have here is, let's say that we are letting authors fill out their name and email address, and we're not requiring them to register and log in to comment. So we're just letting them fill out their name and email address. So whenever somebody posts a comment, right now by default, you're going to get an email. So if you're getting a lot of comments, you're going to probably get a lot of email. Just be aware of that. So you may or may not want to turn this on. It's also going to email you right now whenever a comment is held for moderation. So when is it going to be held for moderation? Well, right now, before a comment appears, the comment author must have a previously approved comment. So what this does is the first time the person fills out their name and email address, then it's going to send you an email and say, hey, somebody just made a comment. So if I uncheck that, it's going to say, hey, so-and-so just made a comment. You can log in to approve it. And you log in, you approve it, and then that person posts another comment. It shouldn't email you the second time because they've already posted a comment and it's already been approved. So this might be a good way to encourage users to post frequently, to comment frequently. But you know, if they abuse the privilege, then there are things you can do with them. So if you do find that you're getting a lot of spam comments, a few things that you can do is you can add words or URLs that you're getting a lot of spam from, any email addresses or IP addresses that you're getting spam from, and it'll automatically put them into the moderation queue, and it'll send you a message to say, hey, this needs to be moderated. Another thing you can do is you might want to make it so if your website is about it's about babies. No, I'm sorry. Let's say it's a mom blog, and the mom blog, you're probably not going to want to have posts about I don't know, random medical issues that have nothing to do with being a mom. Maybe it's a foot fungus. I don't know. I don't know if a lot of moms get foot fungus, but let's say that you don't want to have any comments spammed on your site about foot fungus. You could actually write foot fungus on there, and what'll happen is if somebody tries to put a comment in that has the words foot fungus, it will just say, nope, sorry, you can't post that. Or I know a lot of people will automatically, they'll say, we don't want Cialis, Viagra, or Louis, I think that's how you spell it, Vuitton. It's been a while. So I don't want any of those to be posted on there. It'll blacklist any comments that contain those words. So just another thing to be aware of. One note though is that if you put the word, and they use this in their instructions, if you put the word press on there, if it finds the word press within another word, so for example, it finds the word press within WordPress, it'll be a match. So it will blacklist comments that have just those fragments of a word. So just be careful with that. All right. Last thing is the avatars. You can have your users when they post comments, it can display their avatar. This is done through a service called Gravatar. And that's linked to the person's email address, so they can actually sign in and change their avatar. So whenever they post a comment on a website and they use that same email address, it's going to post their Gravatar that they've set up. So just another neat feature that you have there. So we're going to save the changes. And the last thing I want to look at is our permalinks. So permalinks are how the URLs of our website are displayed. So for a lot of WordPress installations, the default behavior for your permalinks is going to be, they're going to be pretty. Depends on where you have WordPress installed, but for some people, the default installation for WordPress is going to use this default setting. So a lot of these service providers, these hosting providers that give you these one-click installations, a lot of them have it defaulted to use a different permalink setting. But if you're doing it yourself, a lot of cases it'll install using what's called default. So I'm going to show you what that does. So I'm going to change back to default. Bitnami changes it so that it's using day and name instead of default. So if I look at my website, if I go to my sample page, let me save this. Okay, so if we go to sample page, notice the URL is, you can ignore that part. The important part is over here, but this is my URL. Just pretend that's like pongos.com/. And then the rest of it is !page_ID = 2. That's not very pretty. Doesn't really tell me what's on this page. If I go to one of these posts, you can see it's the URL of the website, $P = 1. Again, doesn't tell me what's on this post. It's not a very pretty permalink. The other thing, if I go to an archive, you can see my archive is $M = 201412. If I go to the uncategorized category, you can see the URL is $cat = 1. What does this have to do with cats? Absolutely nothing. So I personally think that setting the permalink settings to something other than default is going to be useful. You may not care, but I like to give my users, if they're looking at the URL, some idea of what's going to be on the page. So if they're going to the About page, I would like my URL to contain the word About. So I usually use something like month and name. Why would you want to use day and name versus month and name? Just if you want to be able to archive by day, if you're posting a lot, like you're posting multiple things per day, then you might want to use day and name. But if you're maybe posting like 1 or 2 things a day, month and name should be fine. So I'm going to change it to that. I'm going to change my permalink to month and name so we can see what that does. So I go back to my site. And now if I go to Hello World, you can see the URL is changed. It's got that hello-world as part of the permalink. If I go to my sample page, you can see the URL now shows sample-page. If I go to my December archives, you can see my URL now, instead of M = 201412, it now actually shows 2014/12. A really neat thing with this is I can peel back to just the 2014, and this is going to show me the yearly archives. So this would show me all of the posts from the year 2014, which right now there's only one. If I go to the uncategorized category, you can see that that's going to show me /category/uncategorized. So it's going to show me which category I'm actually looking at. The same would be true if I was looking at tags or anything else, any other taxonomies. So I think these permalinks are a little prettier. They're a little bit more user-friendly. So I do recommend changing, again, either to day and name or month and name. Or you could just do post name if you wanted to. And what that'll do is it'll get rid of, for posts, it'll get rid of the, you can see it gets rid of the year and the month before the post. So it just has the post name. So whichever one works best for your setup. All right, so those are our settings. Next thing we're going to look at is WordPress content. So we've got our settings all done. This is some of the things I just showed you. I do on every time I set up a WordPress site. I mean, I did a lot of talking here, but it usually only takes a few minutes to modify those settings. There are some other settings that I sometimes tweak, but those are the big settings that I usually at least take a look at when I set up a new WordPress site. So as far as our content types, the default content types in WordPress are, there's actually more than what I have listed here, but these are the ones that you're actually going to see for the most part. There are posts, pages, media, and comments. that's just what comes with WordPress. You can install some plugins or you can write some code to extend WordPress to show any type of content. So you might have your posts and your pages and your media and your comments. You could also have events. You could have resources. You could have records or DVDs or movies or really any type of content that you want. If you can think of it, you can create the content for it. And I will show you a little bit later on a couple of plugins that you can use to do that. And I am also teaching a class, a webinar, another free webinar on the 22nd of this month. I want to say it's at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. On custom post types and taxonomies for non-programmers. So any of you are interested in that, just go to the learn.pongos.com. You can sign up for it. Again, it's free. So as far as our content types, we're going to take a look at the big ones, the ones that are installed by default. And we're going to start off with posts. So posts are what used to be probably the most important part of the content in a WordPress site. This is basically back in the day when WordPress was just for blogging. This was your blog. Posts were made up of, or posts made up your blog. So if we look at our WordPress dashboard again, you'll see that there is a posts menu. If we go to our posts, there is that one hello world that was showing up already in our WordPress site. This is a WordPress content. It gets installed automatically when you install WordPress. So it's already there. You don't have to do anything to add it. This lets you just look at a post without having to do anything. All right, so what is a post? A post is content that's associated with a date. Again, for bloggers, and this is how it used to be in WordPress, but this is still how it is in WordPress. For bloggers, this is going to be the bulk of your content. So if you're posting a blog post on a daily basis, maybe multiple times a day, once a week, something like that, there are probably going to be posts. Posts can have taxonomies applied to them, and we'll look at that a little bit more in depth in just a minute. The default taxonomies for posts are categories and tags. Oops. So we're going to take a little demo of our posts. We'll take a look at the existing post. On the post screen, if you move your mouse over the post, it's already in the screen, in that screen. When you move your mouse over it, you're going to get a submenu that you can use to edit, trash, view, whatever you want. I'm just going to click on edit so we can take a look at this existing post and see what's in here. So if we look in this post, we can see that on the edit post screen that we have the post title, which is currently Hello World. We also have something called the post slug, which is the little bit that's added to the end of the permalink that's specific for this post. You can change that. Notice if I change it to Hello World exclamation, when I click OK, it gets rid of the exclamation. It also gets rid of the space. If I was to type, so if I was to just copy and paste the title in there, and this is what WordPress automatically does, it'll take the title and it will convert it to all lowercase, and it'll strip out any special characters, and it'll turn any spaces into dashes. So it'll clean up that title for you into something that can be used in the URL, because you can't have exclamations in the URL. You can't have spaces. I mean, on some web servers you can, but it's not a good idea to have that stuff in there. So you don't want a question mark in there because that's used for other stuff in the URL. So the next thing that you have is your content. The content is edited in a WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get editor. So this WYSIWYG editor lets you add text. It lets you use the this little content editor to make things bold or italicized. You can also create links. You can create a link there and do a whole bunch of other stuff. If you wanted to, you can add bulleted lists. You can add numbered lists. There are actually more commands that you can use in here. There's a button on the very end called toolbar toggle. This is like the kitchen sink button. In fact, I think they used to call it the kitchen sink. What that does is it shows you another row of buttons that give you even more text editing capabilities. One thing I do want to point out is that there is an underline button. I don't recommend that you use it because, as you hopefully know, underline is for a link. That's the standard on the web. So if you underline something, people are probably going to try to click on it. It's not always the case anymore. You could have text that's not underlined and can still be a link, but it is sort of a indicator that something's a link. So don't underline, please. Don't use it, even though it's there. But you do have the ability to modify the alignment for your text. You can change the color. You can do a whole bunch of other stuff in here. Another thing for any of you that do know HTML, you can switch to the text tab over here, and that lets you type in the HTML straight into there. This is also useful if you're copying from an existing site to a WordPress site and you want to preserve the HTML. You can copy the HTML over. Just be careful, depending on your role, you might not be able to copy all of the HTML. And then if other users are going to edit this later and they are not administrators, if you've copied JavaScript or iframes or some other HTML tags into this text, they'll disappear on them. So you do have to be careful with that. All right, a few more things on our post. Notice that there is a preview changes button. This is one instance where when you make your changes in here, they don't automatically show up on the site. They don't actually show up until you hit update. So if you want to hit preview changes, that's going to open up a preview of the post within your WordPress site so you can see what it would look like. Another thing that you have here is a status. This is set to published. If you decide later on that you don't want this post to be published, you can change it to pending review or draft. Pending review will require someone that's an editor or an administrator to approve and publish the post. Draft will just make it so that it's not published, it's not visible, and draft is useful if you're editing something and you're not ready for it to be published yet. But we'll just leave it as publish. Visibility, you can edit the visibility. By default, it's going to be public. You can stick this post to the front page. What that'll do is on the list, the loop of posts, it'll try to put it towards the top. Just be careful if you do this on a lot of posts, they're all going to try to float up to the top. So if you have 20 posts that are going to the top, your newest content's not going to be visible until after those posts have been shown. So you do want to be careful and use this sparingly. You can make a post password protected. This password is just for this post. It's not like a site-wide password. So you can just type in any password there. And then anybody that needs to be able to access this post or page, you would just give them that password. Another thing we have is private, and what that'll do is it's only going to show logged in users, the content. So we're going to make this public. Let's go back to the default. Another really nice feature that we have here is the published on. By default, when you publish a post, if you don't make any changes to this, it will publish it at the date and time that you're actually publishing it. So I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to change this to July 10th. I just want to show you. So I published it on July 10th. Basically what I did was I just backdated it. So if we look at this, it's now published on July 10th. This is really useful if maybe you're copying content from another site and you're not importing it directly, so you don't have the dates. You can't import the dates directly. This will let you backdate stuff. The other cool thing is that this will let you schedule posts. So let's say that you've got a blog and it's very active and people are following it, and people would just not be happy if you go on vacation and don't have content getting posted. So you can schedule your content. So you could write a whole bunch of posts and you can schedule them in advance. So you can schedule them for like every 2 or 3 or 4 days while you're on vacation. So if you publish and you put this on a date in the future, so if I say I want this to be published on December 20th, you can see it's now scheduled for. It doesn't say published on, but scheduled for. And when I look at the site, it's not there because it hasn't been published yet. it's scheduled, but it hasn't been published. So once that date and time comes around, that's when it's going to be visible. So we'll go back to today, which is the 10th. You can see it's scheduled for, it's scheduled for because when I first set this up, it was at UTC plus 0, and now we're like UTC plus 5. So it's actually like it was in the future. So I'm actually going to make it in the past. So you can actually see that post. Otherwise, we won't have anything to look at. So there's my post. All right, so we don't get into format in this course. It is something that's built into some themes. All it really does is it can change the appearance of the post a little bit. We don't have time to get into that, but I do want to talk about categories and tags. Categories and tags are taxonomies that are associated with posts. You can kind of think of categories as like a table of contents, and you can think of tags as the index. So the categories are sort of the top level content areas for the post, and the tags would be like keywords that you would have like in your index for the post. So by default, WordPress puts all posts have to be in a category. So by default, it puts them all in the uncategorized category. One thing that I like to do sometimes, and I'll actually update this and show you how to do this. But one thing I personally like to do is in a lot of cases, I don't want anything to be uncategorized. So anything that's marked as uncategorized, I'm going to consider it news. So I can change that slug, that default category. If I go to the posts menu and then go to categories, I can edit the category. So instead of being uncategorized, it'll be news. And what it does is it automatically, if I go back to that post that I had, you can see it automatically updated it. So now it's in the news category where it was uncategorized before. So if I look at this post, I go into the news category, we can see it's now listed under news instead of uncategorized that it was before. But tags, again, those are keywords. So I'll just put this in WordPress example. Cool. It's just a comma delimited list of words. You can see it splits it into each of those as tag. You can also choose from existing tags if you have some. I didn't have any. That's why it's not giving me any. One last thing I want to show you in the post is that you can set a featured image for a post. So I just clicked on the set featured image. If you already have an image in your media library, you can set it from that. I do not have any images in my media library already, so I'm going to upload a file. So if I go to my images, I'm going to use my little orangutan here. And when I click update, the featured image, how it shows up is going to depend on your theme. The theme says the featured image is going to go here. So notice it shows up for this particular theme, it shows up in the header. If I go to my main site, to the main page, you can see again it shows up in the header for that as well. So this is, again, it's very dependent on the theme. So sometimes you don't have any control over it unless you modify the theme. All right, so that is editing a post. One other thing I want to mention is if you add a new post, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm just going to add a new post. What I'm going to do after I type that title, I'm going to press tab, and you can see it automatically set the slug from my permalink to this -is-a-new -post. All right. And then you can add your content. You can specify which category. If you don't choose a category, it'll automatically put it in news. But you can add additional categories if you want to. And you can have it in multiple categories if you wish. Now that I do have some tags, I'm going to choose one of them, or two of them, and I'm going to set the featured image. I'm just going to use the image that I had from before. So, All right, and then I'm going to just leave all of the publish settings where they are. So if you don't want it to be a draft, I'm sorry, if you don't want to publish it right away, instead of you don't have to click on edit and then change draft because that's the default until you click on publish. You could, if you're not ready to publish this, you would hit save draft. But I'm going to publish this so you can see it. And now I have on my website, I have 2 posts. And you can see this is my new post. It was published after the first one, so it's going to go above it in the output. And there's my second one, and you can see what it's doing with that featured image each time. All right. I have a question on the Q&A. I'm going to answer it real quick. Lissa asked, when you create a post, can you change the layout of your post content, add columns, etc.? It depends on the theme that you're using, and it also depends on the plugins. There are plugins that allow you to add columns to your content, and there are themes that allow you to add columns to your content. But for the default WordPress installation, the only way that you can really change the layout is using this format setting. I don't think any of these actually have a column, but I'll just change this one to a side so you can see what it looks like. So I just changed that to a side. And so now if we look at this, you can see it looks slightly different. So this is what the aside looks like. It just says it's an aside, and there's my content. And now this is what a blog post looks like. If I change this to quote for the format, again, remember the first one is, and you can see now it's just changes that to quote, and this is my content. It just basically takes the title out. But so, Lisa, to answer your question, it depends. It depends on what theme and what plugins you're using. All right. So, and again, keep asking questions in that Q&A if you have them. You're also welcome if you for some reason don't have access to the Q&A. I will towards the end of the class check on my email. I'm not going to do it right now, but I will check on my email. So in the last like 10 minutes of class, I'll check that and see if anybody has any questions that if you weren't able to get it into the Q&A, you can ask it in there as well. And I'm actually just going to check on the chat. I don't see any questions in chat, so I am going to continue on. All right, so that's posts, pretty straightforward. Pages are very similar to posts. The type of content's a little bit different. You would use pages for what we consider timeless information. So those are good for displaying content that's not associated with a date. So for example, your contact page, your about page, your services, your products, you would probably want to put all of those on pages instead of posts. One of the pages and posts have some differences. Pages can be organized in a hierarchy, so you can have a page with subpages. So for example, you might have a services page, and then you might have a subpage for each of your individual services with more details about those services. And those might be organized as subpages. You can also have sub-subpages and sub-sub-subpages and so on and so on and so on. So you can have your site be many levels deep within these pages. Pages can have different templates applied to them. This is theme dependent, so which templates are available, that's going to be determined by how your theme has them set up. So some themes don't have any templates. Some have many templates, so it just depends on the theme. And the other thing is they don't have taxonomies by default. There are ways to give them taxonomies, but by default, when you first install WordPress, they don't have taxonomies, so they don't have categories and tags. So let's take a look at our pages. So the page right now that actually exists within WordPress in our installation is a sample page. And I can edit that page by going to, in my dashboard, I would go to the pages. And you can see that this looks very much like the posts screen did. And you can just move your mouse over the page that you want to edit. And it's just like with the posts, you get a little submenu that comes up. And you can click on edit, or you can click on the page title to edit the page. And this, again, it looks really familiar. It looks a lot like that post editing screen. You can see you got a title, you have a slug. Notice for the slug, it just makes a copy of the title, puts it in there without any special characters or case. We don't need to change that. You have your WYSIWYG editor. you have these published settings as well, just like we did before. And that's where the differences start. So that's where the similarities end and the differences start. You notice here that you have page attributes. You don't have categories and tags, but you do have page attributes. And this would be where, if your theme specifies templates, this would be where you would modify to use a different template. So I could change this to a full width page or the default template. Or if I wanted to, I could have it be the contributor page. We're just going to leave it at default for right now. You can also change the order. When you create a menu in WordPress, the default order for the menu items would be in this order here. But you can change that if you need to. And I'll actually show you another way to make menus a little bit more nicely than using just the default behavior. The other thing is you can set a featured image. So I'm actually going to just use that same orangutan that we had from before for our featured image. The editing in here, it's the same as it was in the page, or sorry, in the post. So again, you have the ability to make things bold, italic, whatever you need to. So I'm just going to click update. And we'll take a look. We'll refresh this and see what it did. Notice it put that featured image at the top of the page, just like it did for the post. That's a behavior that we've got that's built in for this particular theme. Different theme might display it differently. So it just depends on how you've got how your theme is set up. Adding a new page is very similar. It's very much like when we added a new post. You would just click on the add new, or you can go to pages, add new. So I'm going to make my about page. You can add your content. If you wanted to have it be a child page, so I might make this a child of sample, just so you can see what that does. So you can see that automatically makes it so that the menu sample page has about under it. And it shows the content for it. So pretty straightforward. Oops. One last thing that I wanted to show on the page, we don't really get a chance to get into much detail on this, but adding media. So you have the ability, as you saw, you can set a featured image. And what that'll do is, based on how your theme is set up, in a lot of cases, it'll put the featured image at the top of the post. But if you wanted to add images into the post or the page, you're welcome to do that. You would just click on Add Media. Upload your media, add your media. You can see that you've got a lot of settings over here that you can play around with. So if I wanted it to be small or thumbnail, and then you can insert it into the page. And this is about what it would look like. So if I look at the page now, if I go to my about page, you can see the picture is there. All right. So next thing we're going to look at is customizing our appearance. And again, if you have any questions, pop them up there in that Q&A. You can send them to me in an email. The email that you got the email from for the URL for the class, just respond to that, and I'll answer it when we do the Q&A at the end of the class. Or you can put it in the chat for the class. But for right now, we're going to be going into customizing our appearance. So in this section, we're going to talk about separating the content from appearance, and then how to get and install themes, and how to customize themes. All right, so WordPress, one of the really cool things about WordPress is that the content is stored in the database. It's not stored in files. It's actually stored in the database, and the pages and posts and all your other content are generated on the fly. So the appearance of the pages is handled with something called template files within your theme. And those are files that are created with PHP, HTML, CSS, and images. And all together, all those template files are referred to in WordPress as the theme. So why that's really cool is that it keeps the content separated from the appearance. And that's really neat because you can change your appearance whenever you want to. As long as you're keeping your content and your appearance separate, you can change the appearance without affecting the content at all, which is really, really nice. So what that means is you can do a site redesign without having to do all kinds of modification of your content. If you've set your site up correctly and you've set up your content correctly, you don't have to touch it when you're doing a site redesign. And that can save you a lot of time on a redesign. And people nowadays, they do redesign so frequently. I see companies, they like to do a redesign at least once a year. Sometimes not quite so often, but it's getting more and more common that people will do a redesign and keep things fresh and looking nice. So again, you want to keep your content and your appearance separated. Themes. There are themes available for free. There are what are called what we refer to as the community themes, and those are free themes, and they're free as in free speech, like we talked about earlier with the open source. But they're also free as in free beer, as in you don't have to pay for them. You don't have to give any money to anybody to install these themes. Some of these free themes, some of these community themes have premium upgrades available. So for example, you might have an upgrade that lets you add columns like Alyssa was asking about earlier, or you might have the ability to add more features or to change more options through some of these premium upgrades. The really nice thing about these community themes is that they're really easy to install because they're available to you through the WordPress dashboard. So if I go back into my dashboard, if I want to change my theme, right now I'm using the 2014 theme. And let's say it's okay, but I want to use something else. So I would go into my WordPress dashboard and I would go to Appearance, and then I would choose Themes. And by default, when I installed WordPress, 2014, 2013, and 2012 were installed for me. So these are all free. They were all installed. You can play with them if you want to. I'm going to change to 2013 so you can see what happens if I do that. So I just clicked on Activate to change to the 2013 theme, and look at what happened to my website. Looks totally different, but the content is still exactly the same. If I go to sample page, you can see sample page. Remember, this is my featured image. So in the 2013 theme, the featured image just gets popped up above the page, and this is what the content looks like. If I go to my home page, these are my posts. So that's what it looks like. If I switch to the 2012 theme, let's take a look at what that does. So if I refresh this, that's what it looks like in 2012. It's completely changing the look of my site. It's not changing anything about the content. It's moving things around. It's using different colors. It's using different fonts, but the content itself is still it's identical. The place of the featured image might be different, but everything else is the content is actually the same. Now, in addition to the themes that come installed with WordPress, you can install more. There are lots more that you can install. And the way that you would do that is in the theme screen, you can either click on this Add New button at the top, or you can click on this big one down at the bottom, this Add New Theme. And that's going to take you to the WordPress theme repository. And this is going to give you access to all of these free themes that are in here. Now, remember, they are free. And in some cases, you get what you pay for. So just be careful when you install some of these themes. Some of them are awesome. Some of them maybe not so much. You do get a preview of what they would look like. So I'm actually going to go to the popular to see what's popular right now and see what I might want to install. You can see I've actually got a lot of the popular ones already installed. So I'm going to install, I'm going to install this customizer one. But before I do, I'm going to click on preview, see what it would look like. I get an idea of what it would look like. Customizer does require quite a bit of customization, so just be aware. But one thing you also see in here is what the star rating is for the theme, so it might be useful to see that. So might be helpful. All right, so you can go through and find one. I'm actually going to install, once I've previewed one, I'm going to install one. In this case, I'm just going to install responsive. So I'm going to click on install. WordPress is going to use FTP to grab a copy of the files, put them on your server, and install them and make any updates that need to be made on the server. It does that for you. Sometimes you'll get prompted on this screen for a FTP username and password. Just be aware you'll need to have that information if you're installing your themes yourself. So just something to be aware of. So it automatically installed it, but notice that my appearance of my site didn't change. So I just refreshed this and it didn't change the appearance of my site. That's because once you install a theme, in order to get the theme to be applied to the site, you have to activate it. So I just activated it. Now responsive is the theme that's being used. And now if I refresh, you can see now it looks like what was in that preview. Notice that all of my content that was on the homepage before, it's gone. And that's just because that's how this theme works. It doesn't automatically display your posts on the homepage. You have to actually manually go through and add that stuff. But your sample page stuff is still there. And my about stuff is still there. So my content is still there. And if I wanted to, I can go look at my archives. That's what it looks like there. But to get those posts to show back up, I have to modify some settings within the theme. Excuse me. All right. So a lot of themes, not all of them, but a lot of themes have options with them. So you can see here, the theme was activated, and now in the menu over here, I can either click on customize to customize it a little bit. So I can make some changes in here if I want to make a background color. Again, these are settings that are in some themes, not all. Just something to be aware of. It's not always, you're not always going to get all these options. Header image is something, again, it's in some, but not all. So I'll add my orangutan that I've added to everything else. So you can see what this does. You can see where that goes. Some of them have background images, and we'll take a look at widgets in just a second. But now if I save and publish, we can see what it looks like. Very exciting. All right, in this case, this particular theme also has theme options. This is something, again, it's theme specific. Your theme may or may not have theme options. If you install some themes, they may have something, it might be called something other than theme options. So you might have to do a little digging around. So you can see that you've got, in this case, you can play around with some theme elements that are built in. You can upload your logo if you wish. For the home page, this is where you would actually manage the content for the home page. So this is where you would manage this stuff right here. The hello world and everything is managed in this bit right here. I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. Save it, and then when I refresh, you can see that it changed it. So one of the things you do have to know is when you choose a theme, there is a little bit of a learning curve sometimes for some of them. So just be something to be aware of picking these themes. But there are lots of free themes in that community repository. But let's say that you've gone through all of the themes in there, you've applied them all to your site, but you just can't find one that really works for you. You're not stuck. There are other options. But when you are considering them, when you are considering those community themes, you want to try to find some that don't have additional content types defined. So one thing that you'll find in a lot of cases, like if you're searching for themes in here, so if I go to add a new theme, you search for portfolio, probably find a lot of themes. And some of them have a portfolio content type included. So you do need to be careful. I usually recommend that you don't install themes that have those additional content types installed. The reason for that is because if you switch to a different theme, unless that theme has the content type defined, exactly as it was in the previous theme, your content's going to look like it disappeared. It didn't really disappear. It's actually still in the database, but if your new theme doesn't have support for the old content types, then it's not going to display them. So there are plugins out there that, and I'll show you super briefly one that you can use to define those additional content types and define the templates for those content types, so that they're not in the theme. They're actually just separate from the theme. So you want to make sure you separate your content from your appearance, which includes any content type definitions you would not want them to be in the theme itself, because if you switch to a new theme, your content type is gone. Another thing that I want to recommend when you're looking at community themes or themes in general is try to find one that's responsive. What that means is that if you're looking at this theme on a mobile device, it'll look okay. So in this case, you can see I get a nice little drop-down menu for mobile device. If I go out like this, then the menu changes to something that's better for my desktop. So the theme, the appearance of the site is going to respond to the display size that you're in. Okay, and then Norman just asked a question that I'm going to answer because I just mentioned mobile. Responsive. To create a mobile-friendly site, is it better to use a responsive theme or a plugin which provides a mobile-friendly view? It really depends on your user base. We at Pongos, we typically will just automatically build a site as responsive. The only thing with responsive is that sometimes if you're using responsive, if you're not doing it right, you're still serving up large amounts of styles and images that your mobile users are going to have to download. So in that case, it might be better to use a plugin. But it really just depends on the site. If it's a really text-heavy site, it may not make a huge difference. The other thing to be aware of is that a lot of the mobile plugins, they may or may not be as easy to customize, and they may or may not be as easy to make look like the theme of your site. So it might be easier in that case to use responsive. I am actually teaching a class also next Monday, I think it is, on building an app using WordPress. So this is something that some people are starting to do, is their clients or their user base, rather than having them go to a mobile website, they're actually going to a mobile app that has their website in it. So, and it's very mobile friendly and really easy for them to use. And it's actually an app on their website, and they can use a lot of native functionality from within their phone on the website. So just another thing to throw out there. So again, the answer, sorry, it depends. All right. And now another option that you have, if you can't find something that is exactly what you want for the community themes, you also have the option of using commercial themes. Some commercial themes are free, some aren't. A lot of them aren't. Most of them, I would say, probably aren't. Some of them are. Some commercial theme providers will charge per theme. So they'll charge like $20, $30, $50, $100 per theme. Others have clubs that give you access to all of their themes. So I know Pongos has subscriptions with a lot of these providers. So whenever we have a customer that needs to use a theme from a specific provider, we can just log into our account and install it on our site, on the site. So some of the theme providers, the commercial theme providers that I like, include StudioPress, Elegant Themes, and Theme Trust, and Themify. The learn.pongos.com site is actually using a theme from StudioPress. So we do a lot of custom themes at Pongos, but we don't always have time for it. So or we don't always have the budget for it, or a client doesn't have the budget for it. So we do make use of commercial themes, and the StudioPress themes are pretty well made. A lot of these, the ones that I have listed here, are all very well made. It's just we like StudioPress. So StudioPress, they have lots of themes. You can shop for them. They do have a club sort of thing where you can actually get a membership, and then you can see it's get all our themes, and it's $399, $399, and you get all of their themes. So this is really good if you are a WordPress person, you're setting up WordPress sites for other people, and you just want to be able to install one of these StudioPress themes for all of your clients. You have access to all of them. Otherwise, you have to pay per theme. So, excuse me, if I wanted to use this Parallax Pro theme, I would have to pay $99.95 just for that theme. And then if I also, on another client site, wanted to use the this Whitespace Pro, again, I would have to pay $99.95. So at this point, I've paid about $200 for 2 themes. So I think it's usually, if you're doing this a lot, it's better to just get that membership and install a bunch of themes, or get access to all of the themes. So I'm actually going to show you how to install a theme, a commercial theme. So I've already downloaded the files for StudioPress for a couple of their themes. So I'm just going to actually go in and install them and turn that on. So this would be, if you go into your dashboard, it would be under Appearance, Themes. When you go to Add New, if you don't find one here, if you want to use one of those commercial themes, you can then upload a theme. And if you've purchased a theme from one of those commercial theme providers, they're going to give you zip files, a zip file that you're going to install for your theme. So I'm going to click on Choose File, and I'm going to upload my Genesis theme and install it. And then I'm going to go back to the themes page, and I'm going to add another one. So again, I'm going to upload another one, and this is going to be the Parallax that I showed you just a minute ago. Now, the reason I did that, Parallax Pro, a lot of the themes from StudioPress, actually most of the themes from StudioPress, are what are known as child themes, and they require a theme, in this case, the Genesis framework, to be installed for the child theme to work. So if I had only installed Parallax Pro, but I had not installed Genesis framework first, so if I had not installed Genesis before installing Parallax, I would get an error. So you got to make sure that you have that installed. So now I'm going to activate my Parallax Pro theme. And I'm going to refresh this so you can see what it looks like. Looks pretty horrible right now, but we're going to fix it. Oops, let me go back in here. So in order to make it look a little bit nicer, I have to go into my widgets. This would be under Appearance, Widgets. The reason it looks so crazy is because this header right, which is the top part of the header, has all of these widgets in it. So I'm going to just go through and delete those so it doesn't look quite so crazy. So I'm just expanding them and hitting the delete link. All right, and now if I refresh, looks a little bit better. Here's my Parallax Pro. Don't have a menu here, and that's because they've made this so that you have like total control over a lot of stuff. So I'm actually going to add my menu to the header. I need to create a menu. This is that menu that I was showing you, that I was talking about before. This is my main menu. And I'm just going to add the About page to my menu and save it. So now if I go back into my widgets in this custom menu, I'm going to choose Main Menu. And when I save it, you can see there's my menu. So just very quickly, I'm going to show you a copy of this theme in use. We did this. We're doing the WordPress Day at the Nonprofit Technology Conference in next March. So this is actually that Parallax Pro theme in action. So you can see I've got the menu up here, and it's got little content areas and some other neat stuff in there. Really, really easy to put something like this together. All of those images are just images that are set in various parts of the theme. All right. So we've seen how to install a commercial theme. Customizing the theme, I already showed this a little bit for the community theme. You have a lot of the same functionality with a commercial theme. So for the commercial theme, in this case, Parallax Pro, you can see again, you've got this customized. In this case, notice that there's a lot more that we have here versus that responsive theme that we were looking at before. So in this case, this is where you would change those background images for the different sections that are on the home page. You can also play around with your widgets in here. In this case, you've got home section 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what gets displayed in. This is home section 1. That's 2, 3, and so on. So in this case, what you're doing is you're just choosing what content gets added in there, and you can add widgets. You can add whatever you want to it. You can also play around a little bit with the site layout if you want to have a sidebar, just so you can see what this would look like. So when I turn on the sidebar, there's nothing in the sidebar yet, but the sidebar is basically over there on the left side of the screen. Oops. All right, so I'm going to change it back to full width content for this one. You can see how that changes it. There we go. All right, so we'll close that. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about in this class is extending the functionality of our WordPress site. When within WordPress, you're not just separating the content from the appearance, you're also separating the content from the functionality. So you're not putting your JavaScript and your database scripts and everything into your pages. You're actually putting them into things called plugins. And those plugins are extensions to make WordPress do more than it can sort of out of the box. As with themes, we do have community and commercial plugins, and we'll take a look at both. So as far as separating the content from the functionality, the WordPress core can do quite a bit, but it can't do everything that you might need. So as we already saw, WordPress comes with posts and pages. It doesn't come with resources. It doesn't come with a movie library. It doesn't come with even any e-commerce or anything like that. So plugins will let you add that kind of functionality. And the plugins, they're like themes in the sense that they're written in PHP. They can also include HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, all kinds of neat stuff. You can use these plugins to extend your content in WordPress. So again, as I already mentioned, you can add e-commerce functionality with plugins. You can also create contact forms, integrate with other systems. One of the things that we do a lot of with Pongos is we integrate WordPress with something called NetForum, which is a association management system. So we can get content out of that system and into WordPress. You can also get content for any of you that are using Salesforce. You can get content from Salesforce into WordPress. You can get content from any system that has an API into WordPress. The plugin may or may not exist for it already, but if it doesn't, you can write it if you know PHP. Community plugins, like community themes, are free, as in free speech and free beer, as we saw with the community themes. As with community themes, some community plugins do have premium upgrades available that have more options. And as with the themes, they are available through the dashboard. Installing a theme, installing a plugin is really easy, just like it was with installing the theme. They're not under appearance, though. They are under plugins. When you install WordPress, the Bitnami installer comes with more plugins than the default installation. The default installation comes with Akismet, which is what I had mentioned earlier as far as another way to help you with spam. Akismet is sort of an anti-spam tool. It does require an API key, so we're not going to set it up right now, but you can create an API key. If I remember correctly, I haven't set one up in a while, but it is free for personal use. It does require a paid license for commercial use. But you can see there's a bunch of other plugins installed on here. Hello Dolly also comes with it by default. But adding a new plugin, we're not going to activate any of the plugins that we have right now. We're going to add a new one. We're going to add a plugin to improve our search engine optimization. So we're going to search for one called Yoast or Yoast. Just one that I happen to know. And be very careful when you install these plugins. I don't want you to ever, unless you absolutely know it's the right plugin, I don't want you to ever click on install now because it might not be the right plugin. And the other thing is it might not have been updated recently. So I recommend clicking on that more details before you install a plugin. Take a look at when it was last updated. You can see this one's updated pretty frequently. They actually have a paid team behind it that updated on a regular basis. Which version of WordPress is it compatible with? This would be where if it was hooked into behavior for a specific version of WordPress or that existed only after a certain version of WordPress, it might require a minimum version of WordPress. In some cases, it may use functionality that's not in a newer version of WordPress. So you want to check this compatible up to. And this would be where in the case of if you have to upgrade a plugin, sometimes a lot of plugins will require you to upgrade for the newer version of WordPress because they are hooking into new functionality to make improvements. So this is where when you get those upgrade notices, sometimes you have to upgrade the plugin. Sometimes they upgrade it because there have been improvements in the WordPress, and the plugin made improvements to match those to go with those. So you may or may not have to upgrade when you upgrade the core WordPress. It is a good idea. It's not required, but I do recommend you install plugins that are that have been downloaded a lot and have high ratings. It's not always a requirement because you might be installing a plugin that hasn't been installed before, that maybe is a brand new plugin that hasn't really gotten a lot of traction, but it might still be a pretty awesome plugin. So you might want to install it and try it out. So in this case, this is the plugin that I want, so I'm just going to click install now. As with the theme, it's actually using FTP to grab the zip file from the WordPress repository and install it on my server. It's not automatically, it's installed, but it's not activated by default. So in order to get that SEO plugin to work on my site, I have to activate it. So I click on Activate Plugin. And when I do that, I get this SEO menu that I can do all kinds of stuff with. We're not going to go in depth on that. But one thing that it does for this particular plugin, if I go into my page, you can see that I now have this SEO area. So I can add my keyword, my SEO title, and my meta description for every page, and also adds that kind of stuff for posts as well. So you get a lot of extra functionality with that plugin. Another plugin that you might want to install if you're doing e-commerce would be WooCommerce. WooCommerce is one that we've used on a lot of sites. A free plugin you can install. Again, just using FTP to grab it. When I activate it, it's going to do a little stuff. In some cases, when you activate the plugin, you have to do some extra stuff. You have to do some extra setup. So in this case, it wants to install the WooCommerce pages, so I'll let it. And now I have e-commerce on my site. Woo, automatically. Pretty cool. It's a little bit more in depth than that, of course, but WooCommerce is one plugin that you can use for adding e-commerce to your site. There are, like with the commercial themes, there are commercial plugins. Commercial plugins aren't always free. A lot of times they actually cost a little bit of money. Some of the ones that we use on a lot of websites with Pongos are Smart Simian. Smart Simian was originally written by Pongos. It was spun out. It's a separate company, but we still use it on just about every site that we build. Gravity Forms for making contact forms and some really neat functionality, and Event Calendar Pro, which is an extension of a community plugin that you can install. Installing a community, plugin from a commercial source is similar to installing a theme from a commercial source. You have to actually get the zip file, which is usually provided to you by the plugin seller. So so you would go to the plugins menu, and you could click on Add New. And this time, instead of selecting one of the plugins that's listed, you would click on, this is again very similar to the theme, you would click on Upload Plugin, and you would choose the file. So I'm going to install Smart Simian Creator, install it, activate it. And when I do that, I get another menu. I'm going to install one more plugin. I'm going to install Smart Simian Templates. Again, it's using FTP to grab it over. I'm going to activate it. Let's take a second. And so now if I go to my Creator, it shows me that I've got which version of Creator and the Smart Simian Templates is installed. So now I can actually create additional content types. So if I want to create stuff besides posts and pages, and then WooCommerce extended my functionality, so I now have products and orders and stuff like that. But if I wanted to add that resource library that I was talking about earlier, I can do that. I can create resources now. And you can see now I can add resources. I can add resources to this, and I can add things like the URL to the website. So I can add to my resources. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm going to go over in much, much greater detail in that class on the 22nd. Again, it's free if you're interested. So I'm going to make this text URL. So now if I go back into my resources and edit this one, you can see I can add my URL. Sorry, wrong one. Learn.pongos.com. Update that. And then I can use the creator, I can use the templates to create a template to display that content the way that I want to. All right, and then Norman just asked a question that is very relevant to this. If you add a custom content type while using a particular theme, it will disappear when you switch themes that doesn't know about that content type. Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly what happens. So this is part of why we prefer at Pongos, why we use Smart Simian, because we're creating these content types. They don't exist in the theme. They actually exist within the Smart Simian plugin. So we can change it. So you can see if I look at, if I view this resource, this is learn.pongos. So actually put it in a new tab so you can see this a little bit better. So if I view this resource, this learn.pongos, and I decide that I am going to use a different theme. So I'm going to switch to Genesis instead of Parallax Pro. When I refresh this, that content is still there. That resource is still there. The other thing, like if I use Creator to create a template, so I'll just do this super fast. I'm sorry, I'm not going to explain this. It's running out of time, and this is something I'm going to cover in a 2-hour class in a couple weeks. So I'm just going to create this template. We'll say post content, and I'm going to post the URL. So if I look at this, oh, I gotta apply that. So now the URL shows up. And if I switch to a different theme, so if I go back to the 2014 theme, you can see it's still there. All right, and then Norman asked another question that's relevant to this. Do most WordPress sites really need many different types of contents? It really depends on the site. So we actually we do a lot of this custom content, custom post type stuff. So for example, we did a website for the Archdiocese of Washington, and they've got their content split up into a lot of different content types. So for example, they've got their parish directory is a content type, and this is using Smart Simeon. So each of these parishes is in the parish content type. They also have their schools as a content type. So the nice thing about that is that each of those content types has a different set of fields associated with it. And one of the really nice things is you can search by specific fields in there. Same thing with the parishes. You can search by, for example, the Mass language, Mass time, and day. So I can find all masses that are in ASL on Sunday. I mean, most of them should be on Sunday, but so if I search for the parishes, this is going to show 6 of them have ASL parishes on Sunday. So this might be a case where you'd want to use those custom content types if you have stuff where you maybe want people to be able to use sort of these facets to search for content. All right. I just want to mention, because I can give you the discount for Smart Simeon, if anybody is interested in it, you can use this WPCC50 for 50% off of it. Since I'm one of the owners of the company, I can offer that. So that's the last bit that we have for the formal presentation on this for this crash course. I know it was a lot of information all jammed into 2 hours, but basically I just did a brain dump of everything that I've just learned in the last 8 years. Actually a little bit less than 8 years for WordPress, but for the last several years that I've been working with WordPress on just the basics of getting up. As I've mentioned before, we are going to have some more of these webinars. We do have on learn.pongos.com. We do have, excuse me, some more classes coming up. So we do have a more in-depth introduction to WordPress on, it's actually on Monday and Tuesday, 1 to 4. It's a total of a 6-hour class. And that one gets into everything that we just did, just in a lot more detail. That one's not free, but you'll get a discount coupon after the class is over. Another free one is building an app with WordPress. So this is for, I would say, probably more advanced users that already have some experience with WordPress. We also will look at an XML file. So if you think your head might explode if you look at XML, might not be the best class for you, but if you're okay with at least looking at that, it is a little bit more developer centric. But we will have that next Wednesday from 1 to 3. And then we also have on December 22nd from 1 to 3, we have the custom post types and taxonomies for non-programmers. That basically it's going to show you, a little bit of code just so you can see for comparison's sake. But for the most part, it's going to show you the Smart Simeon stuff in a lot more detail. So if it's something that you're interested in, it's something that you can use. I should mention Smart Simeon. It's actually a bunch of plugins, but let me just show you something real quick. The Smart Simeon Creator, which is the one that you would use to create the content type, is only $20. And we if anybody needs a coupon code for that, let me know. We can give you that as well. But that's what's coming up. If you have a topic that you would like a webinar on, let me know. Just respond to that email address, the email that you got the webinar information from. Just send an email to that and say, hey, I'd love a webinar on this topic. If it's something that I get a few people saying that they would like a webinar on it, I'll probably do one. And again, these webinars, the little 1 or 2 hour webinars, are usually free. Also, for any of you that registered for the class through the website, part of why I wanted you to do that is because you actually have access to the online, oops, let me log back in. You have access to the online self-paced version of the course. And this is true for all of the webinars. So you would go to learn.pongos.com/mycourses. Don't worry if you didn't write that down, because it's going to be sent to you in an email at the end of the class. But it's going to show you a list of all of your courses if I ever get logged back in, it would show you a list of all of your courses in there, and it'll, excuse me, let me log in for a second. And you can get to the course information. It'll also show you the link to download the files. The files in this case would be the a PDF version of the slideshow. It'll also I'll post the URL for the YouTube video in there later on, and it also, for a lot of the courses, it also gives you a place where you can post comments. So if you have questions after the class is over, so if I go into the WordPress Crash Course page, you can see people have already posted comments there from previous editions of this webinar. But you have access to all the lessons, and this has got my notes. And there's also a course forum that you can go to. We just added this feature, so there's nothing in there yet, but you're welcome to add stuff. This would let you, you and everybody else that signed up for this class, add questions, and myself and the other developers at Pongos answer questions in here. So if you have any other questions, again, keep posting those to the Q&A if you're in the Hangout. I'm just going to check the chat real quick. I don't see anything in there, and let me just check my email real quick, see if anybody has sent me any questions. I don't see any, so I'll just stay on for a couple more minutes. If you have a question, any more Q&A? Nope, doesn't look like it. All right. So I think we're going to call it the end of class, almost exactly on time. Once we end the class, if you still have questions, not a problem, send them my way. The YouTube video will be available, I think pretty much as soon as I hit stop broadcast. You can still view it. So you can go back and review this as needed. You should have gotten the link for both in the email. And if you have any other questions, again, respond to that email. Or if it's a WordPress specific question, I usually recommend that you post it. I very highly recommend and I request that you post it on the course page, because a lot of times your question is going to be a question that other people have had or other people might have. So I usually refer people, if you send me an email with a question, I'll refer you to this page to post it there. So, so you can post it there. Thanks everyone for coming to this class, and I hope we'll see you in the building an app or the custom post types and taxonomies or some other class. So thanks again. See you soon.